If you've been doubting Texas A&M to this point, the Aggies are here to stay, at least for the rest of this season. They will definitely be in the championship picture moving forward. Taking down LSU 38-23 here at Kyle Field. Ben Peck with All In Aggies. Follow along at the Ben Peck on Twitter if you want updates throughout these games, by the way, and subscribe to the YouTube channel to help us make this the best show we possibly can. They're still clearing out the field behind us. Apologies if the audio's a little rough, but we're going to break down this game. Instant reaction, just kind of quick thoughts on how Texas A&M was able to pull this game off. First of all, just looked really lifeless there in the first half. I say that they came out the first drive defensively, got the 3 and out. I don't think they allowed a yard. It might have been a net -1, but then the offense just really couldn't get anything going. They had the one drive after the fumble, the touchdown for LSU, and then the instant response with Le'Veon Moss, Amari Daniels. By the way, shout out Amari Daniels. He's kind of the unsung hero, I feel like. He's been, and if you haven't watched our recaps, I'm looking at these stats off my phone just as we do this, so bear with me. But Amari Daniels has kind of been the unsung hero. A lot of attention on Le'Veon Moss, rightfully so, because he has certainly been carrying the load. But Amari Daniels, when he gets opportunities, I just have been so impressed with how he's been able to make the most of his abilities. Let's see, he rushes for 12 carries, a net of 91, so he's actually your leading rusher tonight. Didn't have any of the 5 rushing touchdowns, but he came up big time and time again. But going back to the first half, you get the Le'Veon Moss play down the field, and then 10-7 becomes 17-7 after a big pass play from LSU. That's where we go into the half. My thoughts at that point, it didn't seem like LSU necessarily had a lot of momentum offensively to me, because they had the one short field with the fumble that led to their first touchdown, and the second touchdown was, a big slant play, broken tackle on a 2nd and 11, and then he goes the distance, Aaron Armstrong. So to me, the big plays count, and we talk about the need for explosive plays for A&M. That's true, and not having to rely on slow, methodical drives all the time. But they if you're over-relying on the explosive plays, that tells me maybe the consistency might waver at some point later on in the game, which we saw. But the big play of the game was the interception for B.J. Mays, the first one. And then that sets up the quarterback change. Marcel Reed, saw him warming up just before that turnover, and he comes in. One play, runs it in, touchdown, A&M back within a field goal, and then that's when it felt like this crowd at Kyle Field, they were waiting for that spark to wake up and waiting for like a reason, an excuse to get into this game, to yell, to raise the decibel levels, to get the triple Mo Bamba going, and they certainly did that. By the way, final attendance number 108,852. This was probably the loudest, especially at the start of a game, that I have been a part of. Again, I got here 2022, so we talked about it before the game. I think this is probably the biggest game, SEC game at Kyle Field, at the newly renovated massive Kyle Field, any SEC game. Biggest SEC game at this point in the season ever. I still think 2013 Alabama, given at that time all the buzz, Manziel, everything else, there was a lot of national attention on A&M. This time it's sort of like, if you win this game, we'll start paying attention. And they do. But Marcel Reed comes in, unflappable. I think the interception from B.J. Mays, the first one, and then the touchdown from Marcel Reed was the spark this crowd needed as an excuse to get into this game, to get fired up. And then that's when the defense was really, pardon me, we've got the wonderful grounds crew going to work here. That's when the defense really started to ramp it up. And Coach Elko talked about it. You get in a position where you can make LSU one-dimensional. They're already pretty one-dimensional in terms of their pass-run game split. But then when they fall behind by multiple possessions, it really starts to factor in some maybe forced throws, some bad decisions from Garrett Nussmeier. Here is what B.J. Mays had to say about his interceptions, by the way. Le'Veon Moss, "I just be ballin'," is one of the best quotes, most funny guys to go through an interview. B.J. Mays might have his number there. Take a listen.
First interception, I seen the scramble drill, so I knew scramble drill, pass it to your man. I ran, then I seen the quarterback, he looked at us. Then he caught back. I'm like, ain't no way he finna throw this. You see me right here. Like, ain't no way he finna throw that. But shit, he threw it, and you know, the rest is history, you feel me? The second one, I seen Lacey in the slot. You know, we was in the coverage, so I wanted to bang him, make sure I got a real bang on him, because I know he had a slot fade. So I ain't want to let him get in his route too much. Banged him, ran to the flat. Another thing, I'm looking like, ain't no way he finna throw this ball. He threw it. The rest was history. That's what it was.
So you had the one interception we talked about to set up the first touchdown. Then he had the other interception later on in the game when it just started snowballing for LSU and the Texas A&M defense starting to get tackles for loss. And Garrett Nussmeier, listen, a phenomenal first half. There's no taking anything away from it. But it just, I don't think it really played that much into it. I don't think it changed the outcome of the game or changed the atmosphere or the energy of the 12th man tonight. But my oh my, if we can't get to a point where we're not seeing quarterbacks taking shots at Kyle Field before they come into Kyle Field just to provide a little extra ammo, what are we doing? What are we doing? So hopefully a lesson learned, not just for Mr. Nussmeier, but for every other SEC quarterback. Just, you know, be a good guest, enjoy the atmosphere, mind your manners, and speak wisely about what you say about Kyle Field and Texas A&M, because they had his quote going up on the big board. Then he throws the sack to Torrin York. Then they've got him on the bench, and they're showing the quote again about how Kyle Field's loud, but it's no Tiger Stadium. By the way, shout out Tiger Stadium. It is loud. I'm not taking anything away from that, but again, and to be fair, he didn't say that leading up to this game. That was from the summer, so this wasn't like a Brady Cook situation where literally like next game on the schedule, let's talk about Kyle Field. So I'll give him that. Want to touch on a few other things, sort of big picture. First of all, Marcel Reed. I feel like, I was telling someone about this, I feel like Marcel Reed and Connor Wigman are in a situation where if this was like a video game, you might say, if we feel confident in our pass protection and you're going to have time to throw and there's going to be ability to throw the ball down the field, let routes develop, wide receivers get open, I think there's a real case Connor Wigman's your best option. See Missouri. And not just how he performed that game, but the way that game, the game plan for that game was going into it. When you're facing a team with pressure that can get to you and make you move and be disruptive, I think there's an argument to be made. Marcel Reed's your guy. All things being equal in those situations. I doubt that you can realistically go through a season and have, say like, oh, we're going to look at how the game plan matches up with, if they got a good pass rush, we'll go with Marcel, and if Connor can stay in there, we'll go Connor, and we'll go back and forth. I doubt realistically you can do that. So I think we will see a lot of Marcel Reed moving forward. But it did feel like the perfect situation to bring him in. Absolutely what this team needed. And by the way, I'll try to pull up his final numbers here. Marcel Reed throwing the ball was only 2 for 2 for 70 yards. That actually kind of shocks me. Again, instant reaction here. He had the big throw to Noah Thomas, which, by the way, 52-yarder, I believe, 54-yarder. That's the one gripe with Marcel Reed, right? Like, can he take advantage of the deep ball if it's there? And we saw that tonight. But really what he did with his legs is what set him apart. Granted, he also came in. Eventually they had the lead, and they were kind of nursing that, so that was a factor as well. 9 carries, net gain of 66 yards, 66 yards, a net of 62. So he lost 4 yards. He gained 66. He had 3 touchdowns on the ground. I think we'll still need to see, 2 for 70. I'd still like to see him go through a full game passing at maybe 2 for 70 is not sustainable, but at a good enough clip that you can justify it instead of being a change of pace guy. But I feel really good about Marcel Reed. This is what Mike Elko had to say about making the switch in the third quarter.
Unbelievable credit to Marcel Reed, to be ready to go tonight. We just felt like things weren't moving the way we wanted to. It certainly wasn't Connor's fault. There weren't a lot of open windows. We couldn't get the passing game unglued at all. We couldn't call it right. I couldn't get him to run it right. We couldn't get open. It was just a litany of problems. Connor didn't throw it well at times. It was a litany of issues, and we just felt like we needed a spark, and we pulled the trigger and went with Marcel, and what a spark he gave us.
Back with the new location to let the grounds crew go to work. As you see, we got the irrigation going. So I was apparently in the splash zone, so I had to move out of the way. But, yeah, Marcel Reed, unbelievable maturity, I think, for both Connor and Marcel to handle the situation as maturely as they have. We had a video on it, if you want to go watch, a few weeks back about how sort of the quarterback room is a model for how you want kind of every position group to handle themselves, with the professionalism, the maturity, being ready to go, not taking it personally if you get a switch against you, just saying, look, our job's to win games, do what we have to do. If that means we're going back to Connor, we're going back to Connor. If that means, hey, we're going to switch it up with Marcel. You heard Coach Elko talk about with Connor Wigman, this isn't on you. There were some throws he could have done better, but this was about needing a spark and doing what they needed to do to just change things. And really, the neat thing, as we just talked about, is like these guys, more so than just like, you've got type A quarterback and type A quarterback, and you just insert like an different personnel and hope you get better results. It really is two different styles. So that's kind of another interesting dynamic. I think that probably helps in terms of not overly being critical of yourself or being upset, kind of understanding that's just kind of the chess match at play if you're one of those guys. But I don't think it works as well if you have the wrong attitude in that room, and all the credit in the world to those guys. Last little soundbite we want to get from the postgame press conference. Mike Elko talking about just the change of direction for this entire program. This is the type of game that another A&M team a few years back would have lost. They would have come out flat. They maybe would have battled back to pull within a score, and then they would not have been able to finish the deal, especially if this game was on the road. Forget about it if this game was on the road. But it's really fascinating to see them turn the corner and turn these games that have so often been defeats and heartbreak and anger and frustration into victory, satisfaction, excitement, energy, and taking away, as Mike Elko will say here, some of the selfishness and being selfless and transforming the culture of this program into a winner.
From where we were when I got here, and the whole rhetoric about this program was, NIL and mercenaries and selfishness and all of those things, to see where we are now, right? Where the BJ May story and having to switch positions and learn a new position, and here you are in the biggest game of the year, and he gets two incredible picks in the second half that lead us to victory, right? And you don't see those things. And so that's a credit to those kids in the locker room. It's a credit to their character. It's a credit to who they are, and especially to BJ. I mean, what an unbelievable story for him to go out there and do what he did tonight.
So there you go. By the way, I want to give be too self-aggrandizing, pat on the back. What did we say after the Notre Dame game? You don't judge these coaches off of a stinker in week one of year one of a new coaching staff. You evaluate off the improvement and the arc, the trajectory, how they can adapt over the course of a year, over season to season. I mean, how has this staff done? They've been phenomenal, okay? Hasn't been perfect. I don't want to make it seem like it's just flawless and they're beating everybody by 3 possessions. There's been some bumps and bruises. 10 points on the road at Mississippi State I think that was less than what the spread had. So it's not like they're always outperforming expectations, but there's an aspect of them and the culture, and again, it speaks not just to the coaches, but to the guys in the locker room and the buy-in, that they seem to understand what it takes to win, the ingredients of a successful culture that will inevitably or eventually yield the positive outcomes you're looking for. Just want to go through real quick before we go, in case I missed anything, just kind of skimming through the box score again. Instant reaction here at Kyle Field. We talked about Connor Wigman. Finishes 6 for 18 with 64 yards. So really just didn't have a rhythm at all offensively. Some of that was protection. Some of that was some bad throws. Some of that was not really many receiving drops, I would say, but just sort of not in a rhythm, right? The DBs were teeing off on these Aggie receivers. Running the ball. This was something I wanted to touch on. Running the ball for LSU and A&M, this would be, as our good friend Josh Pate would say, a padlock stat. How about 242 yards on the ground for A&M to 24 yards on the ground for LSU? Now, I know the Tigers like to throw the ball, and they're very tilted in that direction offensively. But 24 ain't going to cut it. And, Garrett Nussmeier, 25 for 50, so 50% completion. 405, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. I believe at the half he was right around 250 in terms of yardage. So second half, maybe a little more than 100, 140, and the 3 interceptions all in the second half. Receiving for A&M, you had Noah Thomas with the 54-yard receiving reception. How about this? Only 134 yards passing for Texas A&M. 134 yards passing for A&M compared to 405 for LSU. If you tell me that coming into the game, I think, what does Josh call that, a padlock stat? That would be one for me. Noah Thomas, your leading receiver on 1 reception. And then even Le'Veon Moss was your second-best receiver with 3 for 42, and one of them was the one he fumbled. So, that play was a net negative, even though it was a gain of 11. So, really, still didn't have a lot to go with offensively in the pass game, but that quarterback run game just really opened up, or the quarterback run threat really opened up the ability for the run game as a whole to open up, not just Le'Veon Moss, but Amari Daniels and Marcel Reed as well. Finally, let's talk about defense. We talked about some of the yardage. I want to see if I can find the sack numbers here. By the way, Tyler White continues to be phenomenal in the special teams department as your punter. Do not have the sacks on here at first blush, but let's just say A&M was in the backfield quite often. Let me see if I can scroll down here and find some defensive stats, but A&M was creating a lot of havoc. Here we go. You had only 2 sacks on the day. Is that right? I thought it was more than that watching live. You had a sack from Ryland Kennedy and then Nick Scort and DJ Hicks piling up. So I do think they got a lot of pressure on Garrett Nussmeier. Kind of one of those typical games we saw earlier in the year where the sack number does not necessarily indicate the amount of pressure you're putting the quarterback under. Actually, as far as that goes as well, I want to look beyond the sacks and look at the tackles for loss. You had 3, 4, 5, 6 tackles for loss on the day, and then the 2 interceptions from B.J. Mays, the 1 interception from Torian York. They also, by the way, those interceptions set up immediate scoring opportunities. They didn't convert, I don't think, on the last one where they got down near the goal line. And Coach Elko talked about that with the 10 penalties. That's not good. But they pieced it together to play complementary football. And now here we go. Just closing thoughts. That's the game. Moving forward, big picture. Man, isn't this what we've all been waiting for? College football fans, SEC fans bracing for if you're not an Aggie fan. If you're an Aggie fan, what you've been waiting for. The team that finally wins these big games, flexes the muscle of Kyle Field, uses that elite defensive talent to be disruptive, and plays a game that even if you're not an A+ in every category, if you don't have every single aspect of your game clicking on all cylinders, you can still find a way to win after you fall behind in the first half. Does A&M win this game in Tiger Stadium? This team? Probably not still. I don't know that they have. I think that's probably the next step for this team. Can you? Because we really haven't seen it yet. We saw them at Florida. They came out and dominated from the get-go and kind of held on. Mississippi State went back and forth, but eventually took the lead, settled things down, and took care of business. And then I think, let me just think off the top of my head, Arkansas was neutral site, and then you had Mizzou here and LSU here. So that's going to be the next test. And you will definitely see that at South Carolina, at Auburn. If they get into a situation where you're down manageably, like you were tonight, down by 10 at the half, can you find a way to change the momentum on your own accord when the crowd's against you? And instead of being in an environment where you just have to light a spark to ignite an eruption, not only in terms of the atmosphere, but the momentum for your team, can you find a way to bring your own energy, as they say, in a situation when your back's up against the wall in a hostile environment? That will be the next test for this team. Hopefully they play well enough early on in these games to where we don't have to find out that answer for a while. They can get a few more weeks to practice. But this is also what we said about the game, the season coming into the game, is that all their tough games are at home. Their toughest games are at home, I should say. Missouri, LSU, Texas, and Notre Dame. And now you've gone 2-1 through that stretch with the big one coming up at the end of November. That's going to do it for us here on All In Aggies. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Give us a comment. What do you think about this game? Like the video if you would so kindly be inclined to do so. And share this video. Let people know about the show. We just got started just before football season. We're ramping it up here. We got other sports going on. We got winter sports around the corner, spring sports. We love to go crazy with all that. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and get notifications as well to stay tuned on all sports across campus for Texas A&M. Reporting for All In Aggies here at Kyle Field, I'm Ben Peck.